Okay, so before I start, I'd love to give anybody the opportunity. Every week we come in and we share about good things that have happened, but probably three-quarters of you guys raised your hand and said that you were in your word this week, and so I know God spoke to some of you guys. Is there anybody that has something on their heart they'd like to share from what God spoke to them this week in their devotions? Sandy, you want to come up and share? Let's give her a round of applause.
I just want to say, without vision, you may perish. And so in Proverbs 29:18, it says, when people do not accept divine guidance, they run wild, but whoever obeys the law is joyful. So I just wanted to remind everybody to, have a vision and, goals.
Mike? Wow.
This one actually, this actually came from David's grandfather. I was out doing some work for him, and it never fails. Every time I'm around that man, he always has some good advice for a father and a husband, and he always references it with a Bible verse. And the one he gave me was from Galatians 6:9. It says, "So let's not get tired of doing what is good. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up." And that really just hit home with me, because over the last 2.5 years, a little over 2.5 years of getting clean and getting sober, there's been so many times where I wanted to give up, and the easy thing seemed to just go out and have a drink or get high. And so when I went home and I read that, and also just there's been some struggles financially, just all kinds of things that have come up, and just kind of wanted to give up many times. But doing the right thing and staying focused, and just even when it was hard and things didn't seem like they were going the way I wanted to them, or I wasn't getting the things that I was praying for, God always came through with something even better than my prayers, and it was really awesome to see that.
Thank you, Mike. Somebody not a member of their household, perhaps. Thomas?
So Savannah and I have been reading a chapter out of the Old Testament and New Testament in the morning. And something, we've noticed and we've commented on and talked about is, especially in the Old Testament, it's God is giving a promise throughout Genesis to Abraham and his descendants that he will make him a great nation. And he repeats that to each of his sons and each of his sons' sons. And it continues on and on. And what you'll notice throughout when you're reading that is Abraham was a terrible person. Isaac was a terrible person. Jacob was a terrible person. They would do some of the worst things, up into literally giving their wives away to other men. But he kept giving them the promise over and over and over and over, saying, I'll make you a great nation and I'll bless you. And despite their massive failures, and that continues in the New Testament, with all the disciples that Jesus picked. We're just now into Mark, and it's a reoccurring theme, specifically in Mark. And I said this to Savannah, I was like, Jesus had literally, I think it's chapter 5, Jesus had literally just sent out his disciples and said, hey, go do miracles, go talk about this, go, help the people. And then in the very next one, he had to feed 5,000 people, and they're like, how are you going to do it? And it's like, guys, you literally just went out and were the vessels for God to heal people and help people and do all these amazing, incredible things, but they're still human, and they still are like, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And then Jesus is like, yeah, I'm just going to multiply it. It's a miracle. But he didn't give up on them, and he didn't say, okay, go away, you guys suck at this. He continued to disciple them, and they eventually wrote books of the Bible, and a good chunk of them were murdered for what they believed in. So.
Thank you, Thomas. I tell you, this is great. Some week I should just have you guys all come up here. I'll sit out there, and you guys could just preach to me. One more? I forgot anybody else? Come on, Jaylene. Jaylene. I've been working on it.
So mine's like a little bit not the same as theirs, and I told my husband about it a little bit, but it just came to me really right now. I had been praying at work, I was like, God, just let me be a light for you. Just let me do something. I know I'm at Amcor now, and I'm not at Safe Haven, and it's not so oriented around those things, but I still want to be a light for you. And I seen the forklift driver one day, and he was just in a bad mood. And I was like, you in a bad mood? It's because of me, And he was like, no, man, I got some stuff going on at home. And I was like, well, what's good, And he was like, he just told me this thing about how his cousin had killed their parents, and it was just the grandma wanted him to forgive him, but he couldn't just find it in his heart to do it. He was just upset. And I said, are you a believer? And he said, yes. And I didn't even say, can I pray? I just started praying. He was on the forklift. I was standing there. I was supposed to be helping my people, but God had it covered, And so I just prayed with him. I prayed for understanding. And it was like God told me. He said, remind him of me. Remind him that that's not his struggle. It's mine. And it's funny because God will do those with a backup plan. You know what I'm saying? So in the backup plan, every time I look at the forklift driver, I've been going through some things in my head lately, But every time I'm over there on the line in my head for 12 hours, and I'm in my head trying to take it all on myself, I look at him, and he reminds me that it's his. You know what I mean? And it's a big deal. It's like how God speaks to me is whenever you're trying to put it out, and it comes right back to you. And God does those things. I never expected that, but that's just how God talks to me. That's my language, He's like, we'll get down this way, Jaylene. But it was a big deal. It was a big deal, and I love him.
Thank you, guys. That was good. Oh, I'll never get it. All right. So I'm going to share with you guys kind of something I was reading this week. It's funny. I was reading a lot of times if I struggle kind of knowing where I want to read or what I'm doing, a lot of times I'll just go to the Psalms. I love the Psalms. I love just David's honesty with himself, first of all, just the self-awareness, that you see David have to just journal out all of these feelings and all of these fears and insecurities and whatever, or even, not making accusation, but just being like, what the heck, God? And I love that honesty and that transparency that David has with himself first and with God. And so those never cease to sort of inspire me in my walk with God to be more real so I just kind of went to the Psalms this week, and I ended up on Psalm 23, probably one of the most famous Psalms of all. And as I was reading it, I was just kind of like, yeah, that's probably going to end up in the message this week. And then the message this week never really materialized, so it kind of became the message this week. So what I'm just going to do today is we're just going to go through Psalm 23, and we're just going to kind of take it line by line. And this is going to be absolutely nothing new, and I hate cliche, and I hate being that person. But this week, there's nothing new or particularly deep here. I'm just reminding us of things. I'm encouraging us using Psalms 23, reminding us of truths. Psalms 23. Just going to read it first. I'm going to leave it thrown up there for you. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now, what Psalms 23, at least when I read it, what I really see is it's such a picture of a life rooted in trust. Jaylene was just talking about it, how we don't intrinsically live lives rooted in trust. We have to be reminded of it. First hand, second hand, however that goes down. We typically slip back into a lifestyle of taking everything on as a problem that we have to solve, as a fear we have to be aware of, and we don't just naturally tend to stay in the lane of trusting God. But Psalms 23 is such a picture of the lifestyle of just intrinsically trusting God, that He's got you, trusting His heart for you. The overall message here, and we've talked about this for a couple weeks, is that the child of God has nothing to be afraid of. Security is what, to me, Psalms 23 is such a picture of. So let's start going through it. Verse 1, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. In other words, I will want for nothing. A statement of faith that I will be fine. God's not going to leave me incomplete. He's not going to leave me needing something that I don't have access to. The Lord is my shepherd. I will want for nothing. I am coming to realize something for myself. See, I get into the opposite of this. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Mine is the Lord is my shepherd. I will want for many things. I get, and my wants get me into trouble. You know what I mean? My wants, my desires, what I feel like I should have, where I feel like I should be, what I feel like things should look like, is where I start getting into trouble. It's where I start getting into trying to take the wheel, take control back for myself and navigate my life to a good place that I think it should be at, as opposed to that lifestyle. But what I'm realizing is that my potential for happiness is never greater. This sounds like a cat poster. My potential for happiness is never greater than it is right now. My potential for happiness is never greater than it is right now. Because here's the thing. I keep looking for something, or maybe for somebody at someone or whatever. I keep looking for something that's going to finally bring about a shift in the weather. I've got a really close friend, and it's hilarious because he wilts like a flower in the hot weather, and he becomes just the most unhappy version of himself. And it's just basically his whole life is from like June until about October, his whole life is just bent on the weather changing. And I feel him. I totally get him. And that's me. I'm always looking for something else that's going to essentially bring me that happiness, bring me that joy, bring me that contentment, get me to that place where I am secure and at peace and all of the things that we want to be, right? But what I'm realizing is that never actually happens. For instance, we're in the month of September, and me and Abby have known for months that September was going to be like a really, really chaotic, busy month. We both have trips we're taking to conferences and things like that. We've got just like all this. We got that concert coming up 2 weekends from now, and there's just a lot going on in the month of September. Well, I fall into this trap of being unhappy where I'm at and knowing that as soon as October gets here, if I can just get through September the 27th, it is just going to be smooth sailing. You guys ever do that? If I can just get through that court date, if I can just get through this, it's just going to be smooth sailing. It's going to be wonderful. And then, show of hands, like how often is that the case? It never, ever goes that way, does it? Because September the 27th comes, and then life just begins to happen out in front of you, right? And unexpected things and all of this stuff happens. And so I find myself living in this perpetual cycle of like, happiness is just out of reach. Contentment, joy, peace, security is just out of reach for whatever. Fill in the blank of what that might look like for you. For me right now, it looks like a belief that September 27th passing is going to be this wonderful, and it will be great. But I will have no greater, potential. I will have no greater potential for happiness on September the 28th than I do right now, sitting up here in the middle of it all. What I'm realizing, guys, is that peace, joy, fulfillment, satisfaction are something that we grow internally, not something that we find externally. Those things don't come from an external situation. Those things come from an internal condition, okay? Verse 2 through 3, look at this. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. See, the more I grow in God, the more I'm coming to believe that the green pastures there and the still waters are an internal reality, not an external condition. Does God bless us with external things? Certainly. But predominantly what God is interested in is restoring our soul and doing the heart work that we've described, doing that heart work in us to bring healing in us, where that those green pastures and those still waters go with us wherever we go, into whatever we walk into, whatever the situation and circumstance. Because life, we don't have guarantees in life. Like, we've definitely seen that be, front and center this week. We don't have any guarantees in life of what's necessarily going to happen. And I have absolutely would have put money on the fact that God was going to come through in this situation, and he didn't come through, and he let something happen that I didn't think he was going to let happen. And then there have been times where I didn't think there's any way, like there's no way God's going to come through on that, and then he did. So I don't really know what exactly is the metric system by which God determines in our external circumstances what constitutes good for us, because he sees with eyes that I don't have on that. But see, the internal is what we have control of. And so we can if we're walking by still waters externally, we can hit rapids and we can take a fork in the road. But see, if the still waters, if the green pastures are an internal condition, and that's what I'm learning to grow, that's what I'm realizing God is after in my life, that's what him restoring my soul and leading me in the paths of righteousness, as this is taught, that's what it's all about. Is growing an internal condition that, whatever's going on, whether I'm in the middle of September and everything's chaotic, or whether I'm in October and it's wonderful and the weather's cool, whatever might be going on, I have those still waters within me. I have those green pastures available to me wherever I go, whatever I do. If you think about David, his life was no cakewalk. Like, if you study the story of David, like, his life was not, he wrote, he's attributed to writing this. God makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. If you look at David's life, his life was not, I wouldn't have described it that way, right? I mean, if you study it, his life is full of turmoil and a lot of it being his own fault. His life is full of stuff going on and family problems and, really dynamic, crazy stuff. His life was anything but still waters and green pastures. So I don't think that's what he's describing. He's describing an internal condition that God is bringing about in his life. And you know what? If you study the stories of faith all throughout the Bible, you don't see some kind of like picturesque scene of like sheep grazing on a hillside. If you look at the stories of faith throughout the Bible, it's chaos and confusion, and there's all kinds of stuff going on, and it's victorious moments and super low, valleys that they walk through, right? So I don't think the secret to peace and joy and fulfillment is finding nice pastures. It's growing them within us. This is what I'm trying to say, and I'm repeating myself way far and above what needs to happen. So let's move on. Verse 4. Yea, though I walk, this is what we were just talking about, through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for you are with me. I heard somebody, and I've heard people say this before, describe like it's the valley of the shadow of death. So like it's just a shadow, it's not real. But I know some of you guys and what you're facing, and the fear, the realities that you're facing are very real. And so I was thinking about that this week, and it occurred to me that, a shadow doesn't exist if there's not something to cast it, right? So to come in and be like, oh no, it's, try to do some kind of mind over matter game, like, oh, it's kind of a losing, like, no, there is real stuff. There are real situations casting that shadow. I think that shadow kind of represents our fear of something that we haven't yet visually seen, but we know it's there, right? Because the shadow is a representation. It's a reflection of something that's there, right? And as I was thinking about that, because honestly, I know a lot of you guys are walking through some really serious stuff, and there's some just real world stuff going on in our body right now. And as I was thinking about this week, and this is the most cliche thing that's ever come out of my mouth from the stage before, I apologize. But God put it on my heart, and I want to share it because I don't know who needs it. But it occurred to me that in the equation of a shadow, the valley of the shadow of death, you need something to cast it. But that shadow doesn't exist if there's not a light source right behind it. And God just reminded me God just reminded me, and I don't know who needs this, but God just reminded me that, listen, there is something real there that you're afraid of. There is something casting that shadow in your life, but also I'm the light behind and dwarfing that thing, and that's casting the shadow. And so just to remember, guys, that in that valley of the shadow of death, if there was no hope, if it was completely dark, then a shadow wouldn't even stand out. So just to remind us of that light source that is there with you, as he says here, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. So, whatever you're walking through right now, and this is so cliche, but it's also true, guys. Whatever you're walking through, God is with you in it. And the light that he's shining down on the situation far outweighs and is far bigger and wider and more brilliant than the thing that is casting that shadow in your path that you're seeing. And he's got you and he's with you. Moving on, verse 4. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. I used to, there's kind of two ways that a shepherd might use like a staff. I've grown up around animals. My aunt had a bunch of goats and sheep. I wouldn't advise it. And then we had a bunch of chickens. And so if you have a stick, there's two ways that might be used. And one is obviously a shepherd could use his staff or his rod or whatever you want to call it to defend the flock from something that would seek to harm it, right? I never had to do that, but that would be a thing. You've got a dog, you've got a wolf. That staff could be turned in defense of the flock. But there's another thing that you would use the stick for, or the rod, or whatever. I'm thinking about having chickens, and it's to herd, to discipline, to keep the flock on the path that you want them on, right? Nope, don't go over there. And you know what? Now and then, to give them a little hit, right? A little direction, to turn them in the right direction. Now, God's much better than me, because I'll confess to you guys, when we had chickens, we had these roosters. I'm getting way off topic here. We had these roosters, and they were the worst. They would come up behind you and flog you anytime your back was turned, and I absolutely hated them. And I had this one, and there was nothing you could do to stop him. It was what it was. So it was a grudge match. It was a death match every time I went to gather the eggs, and it was just. And this is going to sound awful, but my game plan was I would just take a stick and I would whack him in the head, and he would like go into some kind of paralysis, and I would get the eggs gathered and get back out before he came back too. So. But, self-defense. But, God's better than me in that way, because God doesn't get irritated with us, and he doesn't have ill will, because I would have loved to see that chicken die. But God's not that way with us. So I can tell you this, if God does bring his staff to bear in your life, if God does give you that love tap, if God is using that, because there are some times when our eyes get shut, and we're careening off a cliff, and all God can do is just is get in the way a little bit. But what I do want you to know this, God's never going to use that any more harshly than he has to. Because you would never with your kid, if you did have to do something that hurt or was painful for them, you would never let it go one millimeter past what it had to for their own good, right? So two ways God's staff is comforting to us. One is that God is our protector, just as he is our provider. And listen, if you're coming after one of God's kids, you better watch out, because God has no such reservations when it comes to bringing that force to bear on something coming after one of his kids, right? It's not a love tap anymore. So that's comforting to know that, listen, there's nothing out there that can hurt me or harm me if God doesn't allow it to in some way for my good. If it's not serving a purpose in some way in my life, there's nothing out there that can take me out of the hands of God, right? That's comforting to know. But the second part of it is, it's comforting to know that God is guiding and hurting and keeping me on the path. It's comforting to know, even if I may not like it, it's comforting to know that he's there if I'll listen, to give me a little whack and get me back in the right direction. That's a comfort to me. I want to read you guys Psalms 139, 5 through 12. David says, "You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where could I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light will become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you, for the night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you." So I say again, God's got you. God's got you, guys. You're not going to, sometimes I think we fear, getting it right, especially for those of us who've experienced some kind of addiction or something. It's just kind of like, just that fear that we're going to screw it up again. But I just want you to know, especially coming from someone who's struggled with that and has been there, at least in some ways, that, listen, you're not going to get it all right, okay? You're not going to show up to Safe Haven, start coming back to church, whatever, and this time we just nailed it. Because if that was the case, then it would be you. You saved yourself. You fixed yourself. And there's certain modes of recovery that kind of lean that direction. Like I came out and I pulled myself up by my bootstraps and I changed and it's kind of very focused on me and my ability. But I'm just going to tell you guys, for any of you that are struggling with this, you're not going to get it all right. You're going to make mistakes. But I want you to know that God's got you. And you know what? You get off the path, respond to his rebuke, and let him herd you back on the path, because it's him that's going to get you to the destination, not you, okay? Verse 5, "Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over." I was thinking about that this week, and it almost kind of cracked me up, because I just pictured, I don't know what you would consider your enemy or whatever situation or person or circumstance that would seek to destroy you, that would seek your ill will. But I just pictured God, I just pictured my own life, and I just pictured God sitting there. Like I used to, we grew up household of 3 boys, and we fought a lot. And, we would come gripe to Mom about one another. We would bring our complaints and our accusations to Mom, and like, man, Matt's just this way, or he's just that way. And I hope he did the same to me. I hope that's not one-sided, but I would go and do it. And, the funny thing is, like, if you're really wanting to gossip about somebody, don't go talk to somebody who cares about the other person as much as they care about you, because it's just a one-sided conversation, right? Right? Like, don't go, you get the point. And so I would be, Matt, he just is this way, and he just does that, and she would listen, but it was also like she was quick to Matt's defense. And I just picture God, I picture the circumstances, a person, whatever whatever we would call our enemy. I picture it kind of like that, like just talking trash and like just, I want to take this person. And I just picture God was just like a rag slung over his shoulder or something, and he's just like, yep, and he's just setting the table, getting the plates out, wiping it down. Yep. And I just think about that. I don't know what circumstance you're dealing with. I know what some of you guys are dealing with and struggling with. And again, everything about this is so cliche, but it's the truth that our faith is built on. God is setting you a table in the presence of your enemies today. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what is against you. I don't know what obstacles. I don't know how much the odds are stacked against your success or whatever, but it really doesn't matter, because right under the nose of the circumstances that would seek to destroy you, God is even using those circumstances to prepare a feast, to set a table that he intends to place you at. God's got you. I love that. I don't know. I just love that mental imagery. Romans 8:39 says, "Neither height nor depth nor anything in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord." And earlier in verse 31, he says, "What shall we say in response to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us?" Listen, if God is for you, if God is for you, it doesn't matter what your ex has against you. It doesn't matter if your PO's against you. If God is for you, it may not look like Michael was saying earlier. It may not look like an answer to your prayers right now. It may not sound like exactly what you would like to happen right now. I've been watching a lot of things seem to go very, very south for people that I know are walking it out. But I will just tell you that sooner or later, that thing is the tablecloth, and that thing is the cutlery, and that thing is the table that God has been preparing for you. And you know what? In some ways, the more black and white and extreme it seems, in some ways, the more it seems like the opposite of good, in some ways, the bigger the feast he's preparing. Because I've seen this in my own life. The more it seems like almost laughable and comical and like God is just like toying with me, the bigger the feast he's really preparing, you know? And so I just want to encourage you guys with that. Verse 5 and 6. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. When all is said and done, and my race is finished, and all of this is long forgotten, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Guys, this is nothing new. I've said nothing new this morning, but I want to remind each and every one of you that God is for you, that God will not abandon you, that he's preparing a table for you in the presence of your enemies, that he's the light behind every obstacle in your path, casting that shadow, that God is actively seeking and working to bring restoration in your heart and soul so that you can have green pastures within, so that you can walk beside still waters within. God is overwhelmingly on your side, and there is nothing that can get in the way of that happening. I don't know what kind of stuff you're going to have to walk through. I don't know what kind of rocks and difficulty lies in the path ahead for you, because every single one of you guys, I promise you, every single one of you guys face obstacles and difficulties that God probably will not remove out of the way. You're going to walk through some stuff. Life is not Jesus told us that in this world we're going to have trouble. We've seen it all over the news this week. Like, in this world we're going to have trouble. We're going to struggle, and not everything is going to go according to our plan. But I promise you that if we will allow him to lead us and to guide us, if we will learn, like David describes here, to walk in a lifestyle of trusting God and his heart for us, imperfectly, getting off the path, but responding to him, pushing us back on, if we will do that, nothing can thwart God's plan for our lives. And his plan for us is good. And he promises us hope and a future. And so again, super cliche, but I wanted to remind us of that this morning. That was in my Bible reading this week, and I know a lot of us are walking through some real struggles in our lives, and I just wanted to remind you that God has got you. What you got, Steph?
Can I just share,
You can.
turn to this? So just a couple things that God just revealed to me in this little psalm that I wanted to share. So at the very beginning, I noticed, like, for verse 1 through 4, David's talking about God. Like, he's like, he does this, he does that. I like the fact that God is doing the work in the first half of it. And then it gets to a point, and then also for me, it spoke to me that he made me to lie down in the green pasture. I wouldn't just willingly go to that green pasture, even though I could see it. For me, I didn't willingly do that. I had to be made to lay down in that green pasture. And then, going down, he says that even when I had to shift to do the work, so he says, even when I walk, so now I'm shifting from God doing the work to him having me do some work. But even when I had to do the work, he didn't leave me. He was right there with me. And then the rod and the staff to me looks like tools in my life. He gave me some tools to help with, right? So whether that's my recovery meetings, church, my
Mhm.
all of a sudden now I'm talking to God. You do this, you do that. Now I've got this communication where I'm not talking to Danette and Jaylene about what he's done, but I'm talking to God about what he's doing in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
And
like that.
I just, within the few minutes while you were doing that, these things were just swirling in my head, and I was just writing it down, and I wanted to share that.
I appreciate it. Good stuff. You guys bow your heads with me. Lord, I just pray over every scenario, every circumstance that's going on right now. I pray for every struggle. And God, I just pray as I look at just organizations and marriages and people and lives, and God, I just ask that you would work this process and continue this process that David describes in our lives. God, that you would restore us, that you would grow us, that you would bring into reality, God, internal systems of peace and satisfaction and security, that we wouldn't be reaching out for other things and desiring after and chasing after other things to complete us, to make us whole, to make us secure, God. I just pray that everything that we've just discussed would be true of us, and I just pray that you would open our hearts to receive it, God, and even though sometimes those regurgitated cliche sort of truths can be sort of overused almost, God, at the same time, help us live each day by them. Help us walk, because they're really only overused if we've got it. But if we're still struggling with it, and we're still struggling with letting go and trusting you to take care of us and provide for us, then God, help us, remind us of these things and show us what it looks like to walk out each day in these truths, especially in our crazy, chaotic world in which it seems, and it's so easy, God, to get so fixated and focused on all of the chaos in the world, God, and to forget the bigger picture. Forget that this is your world and it's not forever, and you have us here for a time and for a purpose, and you carry our lives in your hands, God. And I just pray that that peace would go forth with us, and that we would live our lives this week with that peace, with you in mind, God, growing that relationship with you. In Jesus' name, amen. Real quick, before everybody, where's Bruce? Bruce, what was so Sharon had an announcement for some of you guys.
No thrive today. And Sharon said that there was some of the girls that she was needing to go over accounting with after church. She's going to show up at Willis this afternoon and go over it there.
All right, awesome. Thanks, guys. Y'all have a great week.